is 6 a.m. on the dot. Welcome to your favorite breakfast show, Kusile Breakfast Show. Nalomuhla ke kungulesithathu sikhulumisa tindzaba tetempilo. It will be an exciting show ke nalomuhla. Very informative, I must say. Looking at the guests, the stoba now ke lomuhla at 6:30, we will be joined by Dr. Teluleko Maseko loqhamuka lapha ka National Cancer Control Unit. Kusipha nje a comprehensive analysis kulandzela ukuthi we are receiving the introduction of the human papillomavirus, HPV vaccine in Eswatini. Tasichazela kabanti ke ngayo le vaccine, how effective the vaccine is, how safe it is, and at which temperature should the vaccine be stored. Namalamanye ke ma questions that are frequently asked, nema concerns lengidawabuta ngibute yena Dr. Teluleko Maseko. We will look at the global strategy for cervical cancer elimination that was adopted in 2020. The HPV vaccination is, it is said that it plays a role as the first pillar of the strategy. This should be complemented with cervical cancer screening as secondary prevention, followed by treatment of cervical lesions and invasive cancer. Each country is expected to meet the 2030 target of 90% of girls fully vaccinated with the HPV vaccine by the age of 15. Sitawukuva ke lokho ukuthi sengabe uma simbuka 2030 sesimbuka elikhalweni sidabe sesimithile ile target yakamhlaba ya 90%. Nga 7:30 we are honored again this week to be joined by Honorable Dr. Lizinkosi on a conversation that will be predicated upon public health threats, looking at just, the reality that Eswatini is burdened by a high prevalence of HIV infection and AIDS, tuberculosis, as well as other communicable diseases. But there also has been a rise in non-communicable conditions in Eswatini in recent years that have compelled the Ministry of Health to conduct an intersectoral approach to ensure an effective and sustainable prevention and control of all these diseases. And while, the double burden of HIV and TB as well as other public health threats weighed heavy, significant progress has been made nonetheless. Case in point is the progress that has been made in HIV response, as indicated in the third population-based HIV impact assessment survey yakangwane lebitwe nge-SHIMS 3. Ngiyakhumbula nje ukuthi ngathi yethulwe ngenyanga yeNgongoni eminyakeni lophelile around the 22nd of December through ICAP, which shows the remarkable progress the country has made in addressing the HIV epidemic. It demonstrated a major reduction in new HIV infections over the last decade. But again, it was a historic reduction. Health Minister Lizinkosi will join me to unpack some of the programs that are in place to further respond to public health threats. But we want to focus ngoba nasibuka ukuthi i-term seyaphela eParliament. We have spoken a lot about the public health threats lebasolo akhungetse live la kangwane kukhumbula nje the COVID-19 kubedvuka kwayo kuthi kufike kwalikhama kanjani live la kangwane, especially the health sector as well as economically live la kangwane likabi unique kuto tonke ke letindvo libese live angithi nje umhlaba wonke utifacile uma kubedvuka wona umkhuhlane we-COVID-19. We will talk about COVID-19, TB response, HIV response, cancer control, and other NCDs control measures. Labekhona, the progress that has been made, as well as focused on some of the other programs that are in place to further respond to more public health threats. Ngoba siyathi ukuthi the World Health Organization njalo ngeminyaka nawuqala ibeka nje ibeka kube sobala ukuthi imandate yabo yinye kulwa nekugula lokukhona emhlabeni. Uhulumende wakangwane ke nanaye solo uyibambe lapho. It is 4 minutes after 6. Masibuya emarket sithatha indzaba tethu takucala talapha ekhaya.
Why should we pay our TV license? The content on our local television is actually more up to date. The industry is enhanced.
It is a criminal offense not to pay your TV license and attracts a fine of 500 emalangeni or 6 months imprisonment.
And the industry is definitely blooming, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have for you. But we'll be right back just after the break, and we'll give you more of Miss V.
Pay my TV license. That's why I can enjoy the benefits of an enhanced industry and keep track with recent transformation.
Mommy, who paid for a TV license and what are they paying for?
The owners of TV set and a gadget with a tuner like DVD set have to pay.
Pay your TV license at NetBank with the details provided on screen. Or use your cell phone via the mobile money pay. You could also visit your nearest post office and pay there. Pay your TV license via Eswatini mobile imali. Any TV device retailer can purchase a license to trade. Pay your TV license and enhance the industry.
Sakupheleke imizuzu lesikhombisa soloku bumbene insimbi yesithupha lomhla ekuseni ake sibuke indzaba lapha ekhaya. Silo inkosi Mswati wesithathu sesikhuthaze abafundisi ukuthi baqinise lihambo lwabo kanye-ke naNkulunkulu ngekuthi bahlale njalo bahamba ngekukholwa. Ingonyama ethi konke lokuphathelene naNkulunkulu kwemukelwa ngekukholwa. Silo besiphefumula esigodlweni engabezweni ngesikhathi kuvalelisa bafundisi lebe bangenele inkonzo teliphasika. Inkonzo yokuvalelisa kwabo bafundisi beyibusiswe bukhona bengonyama yesive sakaZulu. Inkosi Misuzulu kaZwelithini.
Silo semhlaba ingonyama yemaswati sivaleliswe ngilabafundisi labothelelanga khona esigodlweni engabezweni baqhuba umhambo wekushaya andla esilweni bangabuyela emabandleni labawelusile. Nabelusi bemabandla lebe bangenele inkonzo teliphasika kalobamba bekudela bayethe kulandzela ukuthi sive sithole sibusiso sekuthi bekathi libalele kuleti nkonzo. Umcimbi wekuvalelisa kwabafundisi ubusiswe bukhona bengonyama yesive semaZulu inkosi Misuzulu kaZwelithini. Ingonyama yemaswati beyisingethwe bomake emakhosikati umdlungulo wakaZulu nebantfu benkosi. Silo semhlaba siphefumule sathi kubalulekile ukuthi bafundisi bakucondzisise ukuthi luhambo lwabo naNkulunkulu ludzinga ukuthi baqinise ukukholwa kwabo. Silo sithi konke lokuphathelene naNkulunkulu kwemukelwa ngekukholwa.
Bafundisi nani awushumayela ke livangeli yawushumayela livi lenkosi yawushumayela ngaNkulunkulu sifanele siqhubeke simshumayela ngeNkulunkulu bamfundze bantfu bonke ngoba kwaNkulunkulu kuyimphica badzala ngeke uthi uyakuqonza ngoba kwangakhona kuvele kwehlukile nakwehlukile kwangakhona kufuna ukuthi lukholo lwakho lube by faith ukholwe nje ungakaboni nani yawukhumbula bafundisa umthandazo lothi yenda intsandvo yakho emhlabeni njengoba yendeka ezulwini. Bafundisi ukholwa ukuthi kunelizulu it is by faith.
Ingonyama yakaZulu ithi kuba khona kwayo emkhosini wephasika kube sifundo lesikhulu kwende yabona ukuthi live leSwatini libusisekile.
Angazi ukuthi kwaZulu sizofika nini kulesi sigaba engoso. Siyafisa nathi ukufana nani. SinguZulu siyisizwe esingaphakathi kwi-republic ehlonipha ubukhosi babo. Ugudi lokhu ngibeke indlebe angizwanga ngozi abekho kade beboshiwe ngithi izwe elinjani leli. Angeke bengikholwe mase ngibuyele ekhaya. Nifunani okunye okungcono nalokho nikuphethe?
Nankulu Cleopas Sipodlamini ubonge emakhosi ingonyama yeMaswati nenkosi yakaZulu ngekubusisa leti nkonzo tephasika ngebukhona bawo. Umbhekeli webukhosi umfana Nkosi Simelane uthite ngesikhathi ingonyama iphakamisa indvuku njengamosi enkonzweni yekuvala umnyaka kwendeka timanga kwanyakata eMazulu. uNkulunkulu waletha imphendvulo esimeni lebelibhekene naso live leSwatini.
Ingonyama lendvuku lengakuniketa yona yindvuku yetimangaliso le ndvuku lengakunika yona ifana nale ya Moses. Le ndvuku itakwenda timanga le ngiyakhomanda ngonyama nginkulunkulu wasezulwini kuthi enkonzweni yekuvala umnyaka fika uyiphakamise indvuku kuthi awendeka tintfo nemphala yathi iphakama indvuku lelo leso sikhathi yavela imphendvulo kulomdzala kwetisuku namuhla kuyateka kwekuthi kwengikuthi nekwekungikuthi kwenziwa ngubani anabani lokungikuthi anabani siyambonga uNkulunkulu wabonkulunkulu.
Kule nkonzo ingonyama yeMaswati ibusise bafundisi labasithupha labavuse bafundisi labahamba. Isekela lasihlalo elibandla lolikhetho nemincele umfundisi Sipho Tembe ufundzise bafundisi kabanti ngelikhetho wabakutsata ukuthi baphume ngetinkani bayobhalisa kude bathole emagunya yokuvota. Archbishop Samson Hlachwako wenhlangano iLeague of Churches ubikele silo semhlaba ukuthi letifundo telikhetho tibelusito lolukhulu. Wabikela silo ukuthi bafundisi batewandlulisela loti labalutfolile kubazalwane emabandleni labawelusile. Kule nkonzo yeMaswati yaqhubekile nekukhomba inhlonipho yawo kiso silo semhlaba ingonyama yeMaswati njengoba yabekhona eMaswati lethulele sona silo semhlaba tethulo. Lubika kwethu indzabeni ngisandile emakhanya esigodlweni yengabezweni.
Liphini landvunankhulu Themba Masuku lithi kude ke leholiday hulumende lalimemedele ngalesithathu kanye ke nangalesine Masuku uthi sive asihambe sente tintfo letijwayelekile njengakuya emsebentini. Masuku uthi hulumende angeke akuvumele ukuthi kube nebantfu labatawudukisa njengoba ke kuphatamisa tindlela tekutfola lusito kuphindze kuphatamisa umnotfo longekho esimeni lesikahle. Liphini landvunankhulu belikhuluma emhlanganweni nebetindzaba emahhovisini yandvunankhulu weMbabane.
Siyakhumbutela nje ukuthi kude leholiday kusasa emaholiday alelive amenyetelwa nguhulumende athi nakamemetela kufake kugazethi kusasa kude leholiday sibheke ukuthi wonke eMaswati ahamba emsebentini atokhona kusita labo labafanele ukuthi bathole lusito kuhulumende. eMaswati akahambe ayosebenta lawo lasebenta etinkampanini ngoba nawo kukhona lokufuneka ukuthi bakhicite futhi basebentele nebantu ababo kuvimbela kwenta lokhu labathi bafuna kwenta labakuhlongotako kusho kona ukuthi abanenzaba nesive abanakeleli lutho tinkulumo tabo letikhona abatati ukuthi batibhekisaphi batibhekisa emageyidini batibhekisa nakuphi akusiyo ndlela ke yekusebenta lokho. eMaswati kusasa akavuke ahambe aye emsebentini eMaswati akahambe aye etibhedlela la lafuna kuye etibhedlela lafuna kuye etitolo uthenga akaye la emafemini awusebentela abantu akahambe la sebenta tindzaba tetikolo noma nje lotivakashela angetagongonyeke eMaswati bangesabi bantu ngoba emaphoyisa nabo bonke betemthetho labasebenta kuvikela emalungelo ebantu labaphila kulelive batabe bathe sakalala babuka bagadze bavikela sive netimpahla tabo atabe asemgwaqweni abambisene nalabo labafanele ukuthi babanjiswe ukuze live litochubeka lisebenze ngendlela yakhona.
Sekuyabonakala embili njengoba ilitiko letekuhlela umnotfo nentfutfuko lithi kutawuphela eminyakeni lotako kwakhiwa kwelihhotela lahulumende lelikhulukati lelisezulwini. Lelitiko lithi lelihhotela seliku-75% nekuphela. Lokhu kuvela embikweni welikomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwalelitiko endlini yetimphunga lapho lelitiko belicela kuphasiselwa emaphakelo alo langetulu kwa-1.5 billion emalangeni.
Lo mbiko waleli komiti sewemukelwa nayindlu yetimbunga lesekusho ukuthi timbunga tiyavumelana nawo ikakhulu ukuthi leli tiko liniketwe emaphakelo liyochubeka nemsebenzi. Leli hotela litinhlangothi letimbili lokuyi International Convention Center lokuyindzawo lapho kutawubanjelwa khona imihlangano bese kuba ne 5-star hotel lokulihotela. Eluhlangothini lwe-ICC litiko lithi selidvute kakhulu nekucedza i-grey box. Leli tiko lithi selibambeleleke ekuhlobiseni ngekhatsi kule ICC. Loku ngiko lesekubambelele lesakhiwo ukuthi siphele. Kungumanje sesitawuphela ngendlovu lenkulu eminyakeni lotako. Loku kungendeka nakungaphuma timali ngesikhatsi lesifanele. Kanzi luhlangothi lwe-fish lokunguleli hotela nakhona sekudvute kuphela kwe-grey box. Lesekubambele sakhiwo ukuthi uhulumende usafuna lotawusebentisa leli hotela pheceleti i-operator. Leli hotela alikafakwa kumaphakelo alonyaka ngenxa yekuba bade kwale operator. Noko litiko lithi nakungaphumelela tinkhulumo nenkampani letsite lengahle ilisebentise emaphakelo angaba khona. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini eMbabane.
Mabhalane lomkhulu etiko letekulima Sydney Simelane sewukhutsate bakhiciti bekudla kutsi bakhicite kudla lokusezingeni lelisetulu lokungamukeleka etimakethe temhlaba. Simelane uthi lithulusile kucwaninga kudla lolwakhiwe inhlangano yakamhlaba yetekudla litawusita ukuthi kudla kube ngilokuphephile kusukela kukhicitwa kude kufike etafuleni. Simelane bekakhuluma emhlanganweni wekufundzisa abantu bematiko lehlukene labatawujinge bafundzise labanye labakhicita kudla kutsi kuphephe lobe ubanjelwe ezulwini.
Ngemetamo yekucinisekisa ukuthi kudla lokukhicitwa lapha eveni kuphephile, inhlangano yakamhlaba yetekudla yakheke lithulusi lekuhlolisisa lemikhicito. Emhlanganweni wekuhlomisa bantfu bematiko lehlukile, mapaneli lomkhulu welitiko letekulima Sydney Simelane uthi balimi nebafuyi bakuleli badzinga lwati lolutawenta ukuthi bakhicite imikhicito lesezingeni lelisetulu.
Lesihlangane ngako namhla sinelithulusi lesilidesignelwe ngumhlabuhlangene la lekwenta evaluation ukuthi lokudla kwethu eveni kulungele yini ukuthi kungadliwa abantu kahle, kupopoleke kahle yini. Kwesibili nale idea ukuthi ukudla kwethu naleli zinga lako selikahle singakhona ku-exporta kulamanye amave kungendeki kokuthi nje for instance umuntu uthenge inyama leqhamuka eveni lakangwane bese iyamgulisa e-Europe. So lama systems ke kufuneka ukuthi ke abe khona in place.
Letisebenti tematiko kanye netinkampani lehlukile kubheke ukuthi nato tiyochushisa letinye etindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni nginavuma Inkosi Nzinisa ezulwini.
Emaphoyisa athi atawuba khona kucinisekisa ukuthi sive netincola letithwala sive kuphephile ngalesithathu kanye nangalesine. Lokhu kulandzela ukuthi kunebantfu labasongako ukuthi live litawuma litsinzi kulamalanga lamabili. Umchumanisi wesive nemaphoyisa Superintendent Phindile Vilakati uthi sebayivile nabo lemibiko.
Emaphoyisa nebanikati betincola letetfala sive bebahlangene ngendzaba yekucinisa tekuphepha netekuthutsa ngalesithatfu nangalesine. Banikati betincola letetfala sive batsi bayatfokota kutsi emaphoyisa atobabambisa.
Singaveta esiveni sendlule futhi sivete nakubo banikati betinqola sivete futhi nakubashayeli bethu labashayelelako kwekuthi emaphoyisa asethembisile kwekuthi atabe akhona ikakhulu letindzawo leti bana lemisindvo leminyenti atabe nje ehla enyuka asisite abuke ukuthi siphephile yini sisathutha sive seMaswati.
Emaphoyisa ayayifakaza lendzaba.
Besilungele vele ukuthi kusasa umsebenzi sitawuthatha njengasemihleni sibe khona isivene kubona ukuthi lofuna kuhamba akagonywa ngilomunye. Kungaba nje kuchubeka sisicele sive ukuthi asichubeke nako kuhloniphana. Silihloniphe ilungelo lomunye umuntu. Nangabe wena kukhona info mhlambe lofuna kuyenda ngendlela thide ungamphoceleli lomunye umuntu njengalokho kulungelo lakhe ukuthi akhone kuya esibhedlela akhone ke emsebenzini.
Ilakati uthi noma emaphoyisa atawube athe cithi saka eveni lonke sive sibowashayela nangabe sibona umonakalo. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela mina Mbongwa Dube eMbabane.
Inkantolo lenkulu yalile kuniketa Ayanda Sabelo Mabunza ibhayili ngalesibili. Mabunza ubhekene netinsolo tekubamba inkunzi kucekeza kutfolakala nesibhamu kanye nekubaleka esitokisini. Lo msolwa bekavele phambi kwalosabambe kubalijaji Absalom Makhanya.
Ayanda Sabelo Mabunza waboshelwa tinsolo tekubamba inkunzi kucekeza kutfolakala nesibhamu kanye nekweca esitokisini. Lo msolwa waboshwa waniketwa ibhayili noko asesetokele ngephandle kuvakala ukuthi wasesewuya eveni leNingizimu Afrika. Amaphoyisa atshele inkantolo ukuthi Mabunza wabuya eSwatini ngemuva yokuthi amethiye. Amethiya ke ngekuthi amtshele ukuthi kunensangu lekufanele ayilandze lapha eSwatini wathi naketa ambopha. Umsolwa uyaphika uthi yena wadiletha yena emaphoyiseni. Inkantolo itfole ukuthi umsolwa akadimiseli kubhekana nemacala labekwe wona. Lokhu ithi ikusho njengobe umsolwa unekuhle afohla aye eveni labomakhelwane futhi lo msolwa soke wabaleka weca kube mthetho. Inkantolo yengete ukuthi lo msolwa wathi akhishwe ngebhayili wachubeka nekubamba inkunzi. Inkantolo itsite lo msolwa usengachubeka ende lobucala uma angakhululwa. Inkantolo ibese ijuba ukuthi umsolwa ahlale esitokisini kuze kuphele kutekwa kwamacala labekwe wona. Inkantolo itsite umbuso awuqinisekise ukuthi Mabunza uyatekiswa lamacala labekwe wona masinyane. Kulendzaba umbuso bekumelelwe nguSabelo Gama kanti umsolwa bekadimelele yena. Tindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini enkantolo lenkulu.
Bafuyi basenzaweni yasesithobelweni bacela uhulumende ukuthi yangenelele abasite ngemkhoba losewanzile kulendzawo wekwebiwa kwetimbuti tabo leseticetfwe tigebengu. Labafuyi bathi sebede imfuyo ngenxa yebugebengu lobanzile kuleyandzawo.
Kwebiwa kwemfuyo buhlungu futhi linyeva leselikhalise bafuyi labanengi isikhathi lesize lapha even silapha esithobelweni lapha khona ke nakhona kwebiwa kwayo imfuyo kuyachubeka ikakhulukazi ke timbuti. Engani kuthiwa ke tibaya tisala tomekeshe njengoba katinalutho bonke ke bafuyi ngisona lesi simo abasenato timbuti tabo kutoke letikangi. Iphoyisa lemango liphinze libe ngumfuyi liyaveta ke buhlungu balo kanti ke lithi lona ke njengoba sibeka sinalutho nje bebe timbuti leti 26 yathi ke liyiva indzaba leva kuthi lo 26 omhlambi usangiswe nga 4000 wemalangeni.
Nyalo sesiyemungwa setithathwa ngenkani kungenwe esibayeni tishusho sibasonga kuhambe uvala libhuku. Emva kwaloko sibabambe sibathathe sibayise emthethweni kubete lutho.
Labafuyi ke bakhala nayo ukuthi ababambisane kahle ke nemaphoyisa njengoba sebanemagama lesebanawo alabanye labagangako kodwa ke lebathi bangabamba bamisa emaphoyisa abagodle athi ke atawubopha bona ke labafuyi. Litiko letekulima ke ngabelona ke lithini kubambisa abafuyi lesebakhalana kangaka eveni.
Itiko letangaphandle lelive la kaNgwane selikhulumisana kabanti nabomakhelwane siphinze nemaphoyisa ethu elive. Ayabambisana mvanje nabomakhelwane bake babanje nemkhankaso lomkhulu lapho babambisene khona batilanza impela lesifuyo temaswati letingale bahlale.
Lokuxhumanisa emaphoyisa nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakazi simbuta ukuthi ngabe tinyathelo tinike lebangathatha labafuyi njengoba bathi kude kusebenzisana kahle emkhathini wamaphoyisa nabo-ke ikakhulukazi kuyo le ndzaba yetigangi uyibeke kanjena-ke indzaba.
Kuloko nje singacela ukuthi babone station commander nangabe mhlambe bevakathi na station commander bamumva kahle ukhona lophethe isifungo saselibonjeni.
Bafuyi-ke solo bakhale njalo ngako kwebelwa imfuyo yabo kanti bayacela ukuthi uhulumende ababambise njengoba imfuyo yabo iyeciselwa iswe emaveni abomakhelwane. Etindzabeni ngimgiyani Msibi naSimuva Shongwe esithobelweni.
Inhlangano yaka World Vision sayisite imitile ngama-62 endzaweni yakugucuka ngempahla yekwakha tindlu tangasense. Ngekusho kabuchopho wakulendzawo sikelela gametse lemiti beyide tindlu tangasense letikahle intfo lebeka sive engotini yekutfola tifo.
Buchopho emphakathi kumamisa sikelela gametse ubunga lusito lelitfolwe esive sagucuka ngempahla yekwakha tindlu tangasense. Lempahla-ke itfolakele enhlanganweni yaka World Vision.
Ukucuka sigodzi nabathola imithoyi kube lusito kakhulu bana bathola imithoyi ngoba kucala nakhuluma nje ngemthoyi ukukhuluma ngetempilo bantu bahlandeke nalesindzawo ibe ngelephephile kakhulu impela kukhuthaza sive ukuthi ayakhiwe imithoyi kunabo labasete laba-ke labakhela umthoyi labasete World Vision kube bantu lekubonakala ukuthi bede amandla ekwakha imthoyi soyabasita World Vision banika indlu ekwakha imthoyi siyabona gogo ukuthi nawo umthoyi siyawubona unikwe impahla kumthoyi sowakhile umthoyi.
Lababuketi indzaba tetife ehlangothini letemphilo esifundzeni saselibonjeni bathi wonke umuti kufanele yabe nayo indlu yangasense kunciphisa kwanza kwetifo letibangwa kubabete kwato tindlu tangasense letifaka ekhatsi kwanza kwemsheko kulokunye. Umbiko uhlanganiswe Mthembelihle Magushwa ugucuka.
Kutemidlalo ke tindzaba lisekela lemceceshi welicembu le7 Dreams ledlala ngaphansi kwe-MTN Premier League Sipho Mamba uthi batawusebenta ngekuthi khandla kude ke bangadliwa inkemba kule midlalo lesihlanu leseyisele kuthi indzebe yeleague yalonyaka iphele. I7 Dreams seyinemaphuzu layimfica kuphela emidlalweni lengama-21 ledlaliwe kule season lesetulu kanti ke ingcobe umdlalo munye kuphela kusukela kwaqala isizini lesetulu kunembiko.
Licembu le7 Dreams libonakala engazuthi litaba lekucala ukuthi lidliwe inkemba kusizini lesetulu ye-MTN Premier League. Licembu kungunyalo linemaphuzu layifica emidlalweni lengu-21 isizini ledlaliwe lokusho ukuthi kudliwa kwalo emidlalweni emithathu lelandzelako litabe sevele selidliwe inkemba. Lisekela lemceceshi lelicembu Sipho Mamba uthi batawutama ukuthi bonke amandla labanawo bafake kumidlalo lesele.
We are fighting. We will not give up till the last game. I think we need to step up a little bit of some physical work on our part. The primary plan was to try wrap up all the 6 games, that is get 18 points. But today we just got 1. So we are hoping we're going to fight till the last game. Our target is to win the remaining games.
Kunqoba kumidlalo yayo lesele kungabanika lithemba ukuthi bangadliwa inkemba kodwa-ke lokho kungaya ngekuthi emacembu langetulu kwayo i7 Dreams lafaka ikhathi iThambuti lesenzaweni eli11 linamaphuzu langu-14 iManzini Wonders lesenzaweni eli12 linamaphuzu langu-17 kanye neThabankulu Kellis lesenzaweni le13 bona batawudlala njani. Lobekela umsakathi Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini kanti umbiko uhlanganiswa nguFabrice Msonera eMbabane.
Kanti kuletinye temidlalo mengameli wenhlangano lengamele umdlalo webasketball lapha eveni Nhlanhla Maphanga uthi ke kulolu hlelo lekumikisa lomdlalo esikolweni tawubita ukuthi baceceshe bothishela esikolweni baphindze ke basebenzisane nayo inhlangano lebuke kudlalisa imidlalo esikolweni iEswatini Schools Sports Association ekudlaliseni lemidlalo. Maphanga uthi lolu hlelo lutawudlala ke inzima lenkulu ekuthuthukiseni lomdlalo lapha eveni.
Lomdlalo
29 minutes after 6 sibahlola emarket masibuya dokotela Masego loqhamuka National Cancer Control Unit usipha sithombe sekwakuthi basarolawutha yona i-HPV vaccine which has been procured by the Ministry of Health. Letawujovisa ke cishe nje live lonke netikolwa. Itawuqala nini lolo hlelo ngekuthi ke kutawujova abantu labanjani kusichazela kabanti nje ngekujova ngawo lo mjovo we-HPV vaccine ukuthi kujova kanjani ungayinzawo.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
.3 after 6, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Well, exciting news. The Kingdom of Eswatini, through the Ministry of Health, has procured the human papilloma virus vaccine and is set for a nationwide rollout by the Eswatini National Cancer Control Unit. The Kingdom is among the countries with the highest cervical cancer rates in the world. The country's National Cancer Control Unit states that 59.3% of female cancer cases in the country are cervical cancer, and out of the more than 500 cancer cases the unit attends to annually, close to 400 people do not survive, which is a very scary statistic. But we're going to talk about the introduction of the human papilloma virus vaccine in Eswatini with Dr. Teluleko Masego from the National Cancer Control Unit. He'll be telling us how effective the vaccine is, how safe it is, and other frequently asked questions and concerns. Dr. Masego, a very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning to you too. Good morning to the listeners and watching at home.
Dr. Masego, I think in the last week we had Kusile. She explained what HPV is. I think for the benefit of the viewer that might have missed that show, just a brief explanation of what HPV is and then what the HPV vaccine will come to do.
Thank you. Basically, HPV is a virus that causes predominantly cervical cancer. So with the strains of HPV, the virus, we've got the strain 16 and 18, which particularly causes cervical cancer in most women. So we have seen the increase of cervical cancer cases in Eswatini, as you rightly said, and this has hindered the country and made a lot of increased the burden of cancers, including cervical cancer and other female cancers in Eswatini. So with that, we have seen a double burden of HIV and cervical cancer, which then speaks to that now what strategies need to be in place in order to counter that kind of burden that we have in the country. So as a country, we, the Ministry of Health, in collaboration with UNICEF and WHO, have procured HPV vaccine, which will help in vaccinating young girls in primary prevention for cervical cancer, which basically, as I've just said, what causes cervical cancer is HPV. So with that, the country is aligning itself in what you call as a strategy, which was set in 2020, which speaks to elimination of cervical cancer by 2030. So we have three broad objectives that need to be achieved by the country, which speaks about 90% of young girls who need to be vaccinated with HPV vaccine. We talks about 70% of productive age women age bracket between 25 and 49 to be screened with high precision screening, which talks about HPV DNA testing. And the other 90% talks to treatment of precancerous lesions. So basically, as a country, we have aligned ourselves on the first objective, which speaks to 90% of young girls who need to be vaccinated, whereby we are giving them a protection in terms of immunity, so that when they get exposed, they find that they already got the vaccine. So the country has then went on to have a tripartite program, whereby we have the Ministry of Education, another school health program, and EPI, and that's Cancer Control Unit. The three programs are responsible for rolling out this particular activity, whereby it will be a campaign at the introductions phase, whereby it will be a fully fledged school campaign. So whereby we're getting the young girls between the ages of 9 to 14 for a start. So approximately when we get the data from school health, it is estimated that almost like 80,000 young girls between the bracket of age 9 to 14 years old are at school. So basically we'll be targeting that particular age band for now, but then in the long run, the vaccine itself will be rolled out in the immunization plan of the Ministry of Health, so that it will be available in facilities. Yes.
Three questions, picking up three things that you said. First thing you said was the double burden of cervical cancer with HIV.
Yes.
I just want a clear picture there. Does this mean that a person that is HIV positive, let's say HIV positive young women, because I see the focus now, are they more likely to get cervical cancer than a person that is HIV negative? What is the relationship?
Yes, you're right when you say that the chances of them developing cervical cancer are higher compared to a lady or a woman who doesn't have HIV. Okay. So with that said, with HIV women, we've seen that there's a double burden in them, because you find that some of them have HIV and some of them have cervical cancer. Yeah. And then what then speaks to that is that some of these issues, because cervical cancer is a treatable disease and preventable, for crying out loud. So then you find that most women present late in facilities, or if they present late in facilities, you find that of stage 3 and stage 4, then the confirmed cancer cases. Then that's why we call it a double burden in terms of HIV and cervical cancer.
That makes sense.
But then if women get screened early, then it really protects them, because they get to know about their cancer diseases in terms of cervical cancer itself.
Yeah. I want you to clearly justify the reason why it is targeted to young girls, because I think it is very important. Normally, men like to complain, and they always feel like, the health sector likes to target women when it comes to, matters of help or, response. Why young girls? I'm aware, I think Kusile mentioned that the HPV virus is also, it relates to other cancers as well. I think colon, rectum, yes, male and female respectively. Yeah, it's quite a lot of them. So why is the target young girls and why not boys?
As I mentioned earlier on, for this introduction, for the campaign, the target is young girls.
Yeah.
So after the campaign, as I've mentioned, it will be then rolled out to the immunization program in Eswatini. So then after the young girls and young boys will receive the vaccine.
But why girls first? Like, what is the clear justification?
The clear justification about young girls getting the vaccine first is like that most young girls, we're trying to protect them, because predominantly, if they get the strain HPV 16 or 18, which causes cervical cancer, if they're vaccinated, they're protected against that. But the other cancers, basically, when you talk about penile rectal cancer, we are protected for young boys. So that's the educated assumption around young girls being initiated first for the program.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I'm clear now, and I hope the viewer at home is clear. Let's talk about the strategy. You spoke about 90, 70, and 90, clearly justified, but I do have, a bit of a question on what the projection is in terms of it achieving its results. Do you have maybe an estimate of when you will have a satisfactory result within this target?
Yeah, I'll make an example. Like in the cancer registry, we have confirmed cervical cancer cases over age band between 14 and 24 years old. Right. So which says that basically those young girls were infected at the age of around 13, 12, and then they didn't get the sufficient help, or they didn't get screening, or they needed assistance. So now, if we vaccinate young girls at the age of, between the age bracket 9 and 14, so after 10 years, that young girl who's 14 years old will be 24 years old, right? So now we're looking at that now. When you go to the cancer registry, we want to see the drop in confirmed cancer cases in that particular age band, because if we roll out vaccine now, we're only going to see the effectiveness of it after a certain period of time.
Sense. That makes sense. And I assume, I'd love to assume, of course with your help, you'll enlighten me here, it should also avert the number of deaths, right?
Definitely. In the long run, it should avert the number of deaths.
That's interesting. Let us talk about the HPV vaccine itself. You have procured it. How soon is this rollout? Do you have a clear date of when this program starts? We've spoken about it, I think, with Dr. Kusile and the doctor that came before the Kusile. Yeah, we did touch on the vaccine a little bit. I'm sure the viewer is eager to know when this program starts.
Okay, as I've mentioned, it will be a school-based campaign, right? Which means we will request consent from the guidance, whereby they will allow their kids to get vaccinated. And then for it to be rolled out, what I can just assure the viewer at home is that we're in an advanced stage. It won't take long. Sooner to be rolled out. I cannot give us.
That is very diplomatic of you to say, Dr. Masego. You know what? I really need you to give us a date here. Okay, maybe not the exact.
Let me give you a month.
You're giving me a month.
Let me give you a month. Let me give you a month.
Okay. Because I do want the benefit of breaking this story,
yeah,
and having the accurate date for the benefit of our viewer here. I'm well aware you haven't called any other media house to I know you will call all media houses and brief them on the program, but we are fortunate enough to have you here today. You're giving us a month.
I'm giving a month. By June it will be rolled out.
Interesting. Yes. Let us talk about the effectiveness of the vaccine. I know there's a lot of excitement around it. How effective is it? Does it really cure cervical cancer? If you have cervical cancer, what are the common misconceptions around the HPV vaccine?
Okay, basically what the vaccine does, it provides protection for young girls for the human papillomavirus, right? Mm-hmm. The strain 16, strain 18, which predominantly cause cervical cancer. So if you get that vaccine, it protects you. For this particular campaign rollout, it will be a 2-dose vaccine in an interval of 6 months. On first contact, that young girl will get the vaccine, and after 6 months, the other girl will get the second dose, and that protects the girl from from the human papillomavirus. So basically, it gives a benefit for that particular young girl at a tender age to be protected against the virus itself. You might be aware that the human papillomavirus, you can get it. There are a lot of different ones. Some of them clear for themselves, but the one particular that causes cervical cancer, that's the one we're targeting. So we want to protect the young girls and the young boys in terms of the other cancers we talk about, penile cancer and rectal cancer.
Others clear themselves?
Some do. Some do.
What do you mean? So there are different strains?
More than 100 strains of HPV.
That is wild.
More than 100 strains,
yeah.
Yes.
I'm just happy that you've broken it. First here that the rollout is exactly in a month. So we're excited for that. Talk to me about the risk factors of the HPV infection, the sexual exposure, and what it trickles down to.
Okay. The risk factors, primarily the risk factor of HPV is sexual exposure. So then you can talk about your multiple partners, you can talk about other factors, but the fact that you're sexually exposed, you're then basically at risk of getting HPV.
Do you know why I'm interested in that answer?
Yeah.
When you say you are targeting young girls and the ages that you mentioned, do you guys see a growing trend of young girls being sexually active? or you are preventing it before it happens?
We are preventing it before it happens.
You're being proactive.
Because what we are doing, basically, we are doing what's called an educational assumption in terms of the science itself, you know. We might be aware that they're currently exposed, but the level of exposure is really minimal compared to the other age bands.
Okay. I've also heard about, you know, smoking being a risk factor for HPV infection. How true is that?
It is true. Smoking is if you would know that smoking causes is a risk factor for most cancers, basically.
I believe the box is also written.
Yeah, it is written. But then people always think that I could not get it now. It won't affect me.
Yeah.
But then when it starts trickling in, when you start suffering about any cancer, then you track back your history and you find that you're a heavy smoker or you smoke like 30 cigarettes a day. Then you then tell that this is the exposure basically that led to this particular cancer.
What is the trend between smoking and cancer with what you've seen in Eswatini in particular? Have you seen, how strong is it?
Yeah, it is. It's a known fact. The association is clear with that.
Wow.
The association is very clear because, you know, some of those risk factors are coupled with occupational exposure.
Yeah.
So then when they're coupled with that, you find that people do like a lot of, I would say, manual work, right? People are working in mines. Some people are working in some factories who are exposed to certain toxic chemicals, which then would lead to a certain level of them suffering and other cancers like lung cancer.
And then how common then is genetic predisposition, family history?
That one is, it's a known fact. Literature has proven that predisposed genetic factors are also a risk factor.
Yeah.
We cannot run away from that. Basically, then what we usually then advocate for is that we advocate for people to have a better lifestyle, improved lifestyle, and have a good diet in terms of trying to protect themselves, not to have that kind of cancer that a family member has had before.
Okay. Mr. Maseko, the rollout of vaccines is always tricky. I've seen it with especially the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. A lot of misconceptions, a lot of myths, a lot of scientists that come out of nowhere on the internet. A journalist like me can become a scientist because on the internet, everyone is an expert.
Of course.
But I think it's very essential that now that you're here to overemphasize the safety of these vaccines, because I know there will be that reluctance from the parents and as well as the children, because the general sentiment around vaccines has become, both sides. Some people are eager to take the vaccine, some people are not so keen. Talk to me about the safety of the vaccine.
The vaccine is very safe. It's been used in the developed countries, the UK, and it's been used in African countries like Zimbabwe, Malawi, and South Africa. So the vaccine is safe, very safe. I'm aware of what you've just said about the vaccine, people being reluctant and everything. That's why we decided not to rush the rollout. We just have to do a really thorough job in terms of sensitization and doing the spade work in terms of informing the population really what the vaccine is and what does really happen, the benefits of it.
Yeah. It is a known fact highlighted by Kusile that the vaccine should be complemented by other measures, maybe preventative measures of cervical cancer. What are those measures? Does it come with more screening? What else should it be complemented with?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, it should be complemented with screening. The vaccine itself is a primary prevention of cervical cancer, but that does not take away the mandatory part of screening, because you should continue screening to really find out if you have any precancerous lesions which need to be treated at that particular moment. Because we need to screen our young girls, because if we don't screen them, then we find ourselves discovering them at a later stage. Then now we have to offer chemotherapy and other interventions,
which is expensive.
Expensive now. So screening of cervical cancer won't go away after HPV vaccine. We still emphasize women need to screen for cervical cancer, for precancerous lesions, so that they can be treated at the point of care where they receive the screening.
Does this then compel the Ministry of Health and the National Cancer Control Unit to devise programs and measures to go to the schools and screen these young girls? Because my assumption would be coming to the cancer units and getting screened there becomes rather expensive and tedious, looking at how wide the country is. A young girl from Eswatini, how do they make it to, how do they make it for screening? Do you guys have measures that you've put in place to take screening to the people?
Yes, we do. Basically, our screening activities are available in almost all health facilities in the kingdom.
Right.
So anybody who wants to get cervical cancer screening can receive it at any facility. And then we always have we have this that everybody who has HIV positive has to screen minimum once a year. Then everybody who's HIV negative has to screen once in 2 years. So that standard, that algorithm, we've seen it working for the country because we're able to capture a lot of women at precancer stage and they get treated at point of care.
Yeah.
Because we have, when I talk about precancer lesions, we have different treating modalities.
Okay.
So we use what you call thermal ablation, which would be like your cryotherapy or your thermocoagulation. We also use LEAP. So when we do treat precancerous lesions, we really are averting the point whereby that particular lady or the particular woman could develop cervical cancer at a later stage. So we really advocate as a ministry that women should get screened because cervical cancer is treatable and preventable. So now we're nailing it on the prevention part on the young girls. So now the other ladies who are above that age band, who maybe are sexually exposed in different spheres, we advocate that they should get screened. Or if you're HIV negative, screen annually, twice a year rather. If you're HIV positive, screen annually, so that it could be easy for the precancer lesions to be picked in that particular period and could be treated at that particular facility to get screened at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question just could be a very, technical one in the sense that I'm not too sure if you guys have the numbers yet, but it would be interesting if you do. The population of young girls in the country, especially those that are still below the age of 15, seeing that your target, the 2030 target, is a global target, is to, have at least 90% of girls fully vaccinated who are below the age of 15. Do we have a population of girls that are younger than the age of 15 in the country? Just, it should give us a sense of how long it's going to take us to meet this target.
Okay, I would say this target, once the vaccine is in the country, I would call this target as a low-hanging fruit target, right? Because we have the numbers, we have the stats. Right. We have assistance, as I just mentioned earlier when I began, that we're working with school health, which is under Ministry of Education. And school health has all the data in terms of the girls who are aged below 15 years old.
Yeah.
So basically, as I said, we have like almost 80,000 young girls in school, and we have like 3%, which is around 2,383.
Mr. Marcel, mangakhi ama vaccine esiwatholako ku COVID-19 bekushiwo ukuthi we are receiving 10,000 doses. Mangakhi esiwatholako? I know maybe atawufika in different,
as I've just said, it's the 2-dose this routine strategy.
Yes.
First dose at contact, second dose after 6 months.
Yes.
So you want the actual doses arriving in the country.
Yes.
That I couldn't confirm to you and say 50,000 or what, because also have to have what you call a buffer stock in terms of whatever happened to the vaccine, with the cold chain and whatever. So I couldn't give you a number and say 100,000 because I've been shooting myself on the phone.
I'm afraid we don't have enough time. I would have asked you what a buffer stock is because I do want to, hold you and, give me an estimate really of the number of vaccines because there's
I think let's do the math, me and you now.
Okay.
Okay, we have 80,000 young girls below the age
of 15.
Yeah. They're receiving 2 doses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many is that?
That's 160,000.
160,000, right?
Yeah.
We have 2,383 young girls out of school. Let's do the math again.
Very, very lovely having you on the show.
Same here, huh?
Yeah.
So,
it's very lovely having you on the show. Thank you for that comprehensive analysis of the HPV vaccine. I believe the viewer at home sositfolile sithombe sokuthi yini le HPV vaccine seyikhona nale excitement ukuthi batali bagcugcutele abantu babo ukuthi bahambe bayojova. Siyabonga kakhulu kusijona ehlelweni. Sitawuphinde sinibuyise ke in 4 weeks time naseyifikile ivaccine njengoba usithembisile. We will hold you accountable. Situlo sesenu leso savumelana ukuthi ba cancer every Wednesday niyafika.
Okay.
Yeah, so siyabonga. ukuthi sitawukhona ukuresponda kuyo i-cancer. Dr. Teleko Maseko from the National Cancer Control Unit, just giving us isithombe sokuthi njengoba live selilungele ukuthola yona i-HPV vaccine and kuyi-rolla out ke kujova abantwana labangephansi kweminyaka lelishumi neminyaka lesihlanu lapha eveni kumitha yona i-global strategy lekhona ya-1979 njengoba ke ayichazile Dr. Maseko. Sithemba ukuthi live la kangwane litayamukela le rollout lena bantwana basitakale silwe nayo cervical cancer siyinqobe. It is 56 minutes after 6 Bahlolet Market. Masibuya sithola i-traffic update.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Minutes before 7, welcome back. Good morning. Thank you for staying with us lapha ehlelweni. Sibuya emarket sibuya sithola yona i-traffic update. Sergeant Bekmuzikule is on the phone kusipha sona simo semgwaqo. Sikuvusele eMagwabane engabe nisebenza kanjani emigwaqweni usibikela kuthini namhla sive seMaswati.
Angivusele Mnguni ekseni ngivusele umbukelo welihlelo. Sivuka sinenkungu etindzawo letiphakeme ibonakala ikhansa phansi sibili.
Ngathi-ke tinsambo tiyaphambana sicela nje ukuthi umbukeli yasibeketelele kungathi-ke tinsambo tiyaphambana sicela umbukeli yasibeketelele boproducer basatama kuchumana naye Sergeant Bekmuzi kule kwesibili manetwork ngathi-ke alwe nathi lapho kodwa nje utawusipha yona i-traffic update bekasathanza kusho kona ukuthi kungathi bekunetinkhungu asisangasiphi kahle sithombe ekutheni sivuka sime kanjani. Sibahlole emarket masinyane uma sibuya sinelithemba ukuthi sitabe sesiphinde sesimtholele Sergeant Bekmuzi kule. Uma singampholi-ke sitawubuya nayo ama-internationals. It is 58 minutes. In fact, it's just 1 minute before 7. Sibahlole emarket uma sibuya sivele sigibele tikwato tindzaba lechichamka ngephandle kwalapha eveni.
Information contained in the online leaks, but acknowledges that they present a serious risk to national security.
They certainly appear to be directly related to national security concerns and intelligence. We don't know who's responsible for this, and we don't know if they have more that they intend to post.
Dozens of photos of the documents, some marked top secret, have been circulating on social media platforms and messaging services, including Discord, Twitter and Telegram for weeks before being discovered by the US government. The trove of documents includes a Pentagon assessment that Ukraine could run out of missiles and ammunition within weeks, and that air defenses protecting troops on the front line could be depleted by May. The papers also reveal information about other allies such as Israel, Turkey, Australia and South Korea, some suggesting the US was eavesdropping on internal conversations in Seoul.
Since South Korea and the US are intelligence allies, we are now closely carrying out intelligence activities together on important issues. This incident is expected to serve as a chance for the two sides to further strengthen mutual trust.
But intelligence experts say spying on other countries, including allies, is fairly standard practice in international politics and nothing that countries don't already know.
I think on a political level that government officials will show some surprise, and certainly they have to do this. But I think that it's widely accepted amongst allies and international partners that allies do spy on one another.
Hundreds, if not thousands of officials reportedly had security clearances to access the documents. The Pentagon says it has now taken steps to reduce the number of people who have access to classified material.
The Russian-installed head of the Moscow-controlled part of Ukraine's Donetsk region that Russian forces controlled more than 75% of the besieged city of Bakhmut. The battle for Bakhmut has been one of the bloodiest of the 13-month war, drawing comparisons with World War I due to massive casualties on both sides.
After months of grinding warfare, Russian forces are claiming progress in Bakhmut, the fiercest battle of the war in Ukraine. In these images, Denis Pushilin, the head of the separatist Donetsk People's Republic, purportedly tours the ravaged city. He told Russian state TV it was now mostly under Moscow's control.
I can categorically say that more than 75% of the city is under our regiment's control. So today, we had the chance to assess the level of destruction.
And the destruction is massive. Nearly every building in Bakhmut has been smashed. Pushilin blamed Kiev and said Moscow-backed Wagner troops were evacuating civilians to safety. Ukraine rubbished the claims, saying Russia had switched to so-called scorched earth tactics, as seen in Syria. 15 kilometers to the west, the small city of Chasiv Yar is also in ruins. This man fled Bakhmut on his bicycle. He said the devastation was the same across the area.
The whole district is like this. Maybe only 10% of buildings are intact. Everything else was hit by several rockets. The destruction here is the same as in Bakhmut. I drove a bit and saw that homes are totally destroyed.
Russia's winter offensive to take Bakhmut failed to make significant progress, and any advances have come at a huge cost. But defending forces have also taken heavy casualties in the battered city, which Kiev and its Western allies agree now has little more than symbolic importance.
In France, French President Emmanuel Macron risks creating fresh confusion among his Western allies and encouraging China with his latest headline-grabbing foreign policy comments. This time on Taiwan, analysts say returning from a trip to China, the 45-year-old French leader told the United States-based Politico site and France's Les Echos newspaper that Europe shouldn't be a follower of the United States in the event of conflict with China over Taiwan. Here's a report.
Their comments that have landed the French president in hot water. Emmanuel Macron saying Europe must avoid being drawn into any conflict between the US and China over Taiwan. His remarks were made in an interview following his 3-day state visit to Beijing, where he was given a rock-star welcome by President Xi Jinping. Speaking to reporters from Les Echos and Politico, Macron said Europe has no interest in accelerating the conflict.
Do we have an interest in speeding up on the subject of Taiwan? No. The worst of things would be to think that we Europeans must be followers on this subject and adapt ourselves to an American rhythm and a Chinese overreaction.
His comments have stoked anger and alarm by some as being too accommodating of Beijing. Reaffirming his vision of strategic autonomy, he added that Europe should strive to become the third superpower in the global order and not a vessel in the US-China clash. Remarks that the Polish Prime Minister says diminishes the EU-US relationship.
The alliance with the United States is an absolute foundation of our security, which is based on two pillars: economic cooperation and in the field of defence. Some Western leaders dream of cooperation with everyone, with Russia and with certain powers in the Far East.
China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and has not so subtly hinted in the past at the possibility of using force to bring the island under its control. On Monday, it concluded military drills around Taiwan, launched in response to a meeting in Los Angeles between Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen and U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy last week.
And in Italy, their Coast Guard is carrying out operations to rescue two boats carrying a total of 1,200 people after a surge in the number of migrants crossing the Mediterranean from North Africa over the weekend.
Hundreds aboard this small boat in distress. This footage was taken by a Renaissance aircraft belonging to German NGO Sea-Watch on Sunday. Its pilot radioed nearby merchant ships.
Water is entering the boat. The boat is out of fuel. They have no drinking water anymore. There's one pregnant woman in boat and 10 babies. Over.
According to Sea-Watch, the two merchant ships were ordered by Malta not to conduct a rescue operation, but only to supply the boat with fuel. Unofficial helpline alarm phone received distress calls from a boat with about 400 people, which departed from Tobruk in Libya. These Italian Coast Guard images show one of several rescue operations in Italian waters in recent days. At least 2 migrants died and around 20 were missing when another boat sank over the weekend. German aid group Rescue Ship said its rescuers found about 25 people in the water who said they'd been there for 2 hours. In the last few days alone, thousands of migrants have reached the island of Lampedusa, while over 28,000 migrants have arrived in Italy since the start of the year. That's almost 4 times more than the same period last year, despite efforts by the right-wing coalition government to clamp down on irregular migration. Recent instability in Tunisia due to the government's anti-migrant stance is thought to have influenced the increase.
At least 2 people have died and about 20 others are missing after a boat traveling clandestinely from Tunisia to Italy sank in the Mediterranean Sea. Rome says that more than 28,000 migrants have arrived in Italy since the start of the year, and almost 4 times more than over the period last year. The United Nations reckons the number of boats trying to make it over from Tunisia is up by 226%. Here's a report.
The Tunisian Coast Guard tracks migrant boats at sea 24 hours a day to intercept the informal crossings. These migrants are refusing to leave their boats. This particular night, 9 boats each with about 30 people are arrested. These are record numbers and the high season hasn't even begun yet. In the early morning, we come across a boat of Tunisians, one of whom also brought their child with them and agreed to talk with us.
I brought my daughter and family because of the living conditions back home. How long can we keep up with rent? We can't build a house. Day and night I run around working so we can eat. It's my 3rd attempt at a crossing and I'll try again, hopefully.
The number of migrants from Tunisia and other African countries is rising. President Kais Saied's anti-migrant speech in February sparked violence against black workers, and many were kicked out of their homes and jobs and now feel a sea crossing is the only way out. In Sfax, we meet Elki from Ivory Coast, who survived a shipwreck in March.
My husband lost his job. That's why, with the little money we had, we used it to leave.
Elki lost her son and husband in the wreck. Still in shock, she doesn't know what to do next.
If I go back now, I have nothing to give my family. They'll say, you did 6 years here and you have nothing to send back home. What can I say?
Tunisian authorities are struggling to stop the flow of people towards Italy.
With the current economic crisis and state of public finances, Tunisia can't manage the migration issue. You can see already everything depends on civil society groups. It's these organizations that provide food, diapers, and milk. Unfortunately, in Sfax, we don't even have a center to temporarily place arrested migrants.
At the port of Sfax, we find a National Guard boat that arrested close to 300 migrants in one night. Once they arrive at port, they are all released. Several of them are likely to try to make the crossing again as soon as they are able.
In the United States, President Joseph Biden has headed to Belfast, where leaders will discuss a 1998 peace agreement that ended over a quarter-century of sectarian conflict in British-held Northern Ireland between pro-British Unionists and nationalists who wanted to unite with independent Ireland. That deal is now complicated by the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union. Here's a report.
President Joe Biden often mentions his Irish roots, but this trip is no vacation, he says. As he left for Belfast in Northern Ireland, Biden stressed the importance of a 1998 agreement that brought peace to the island after decades of sectarian strife between mostly Catholic nationalists who wished to unite with neighboring Ireland and mostly Protestant Unionists who wished to remain within the UK.
What's your top priority on this trip, sir? Make sure the Irish Accords and the Windsor Agreement stay in place. Keep the peace. That's the main thing.
That is a big lift. That peace is being tested by the UK's 2016 vote to leave the European Union, taking Northern Ireland with it and leaving the rest of the island in the EU. Analysts say there is bipartisan will in the US to see the island succeed. They point to two ways the world's wealthiest nation can encourage stability: with attention and with money.
There can be investments in the region, there can be special envoys that remain invested, and then I think there also needs to be effort put into trust building. After the Good Friday Agreement, we all kind of assumed the peace was done. Really, that was the moment to kick up the efforts in high gear.
The situation has degenerated since the Brexit vote, and the Windsor framework that Biden described has not won support from Northern Ireland's pro-UK political party. They have boycotted the government for more than a year, threatening the delicate power-sharing agreement formed after the 1998 peace accord. Ireland's leader explained what's at stake.
We want to see the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement restored so they can provide hope for a new generation. And we'd like to see the people of Northern Ireland benefit from the rich economic opportunities available to them.
But peace is a process, Rees says, and so far, there has been progress.
The reason I'm still positive is we see the emergence and the increasing success of non-sectarian parties on the political sphere. Yes, we could be in a better place, but we really have made huge strides since 1998.
And for Biden, this visit holds personal history. Like most American families, the Bidens came from another continent. This village was the start of their very American story.
The Irish left here during oppression and famine, went to Scranton and worked in the coal mines and on the railways, really difficult jobs, but with pride and enthusiasm for a better life. And they were able to provide that for their people. And that has come full circle now with a son of Ballina, an ancestor of Ballina, becoming US president and sitting in the Oval Office.
On Friday, that son of Ballina will speak before residents of this small town. But his words will be heard around the world.
With Turkey in the grip of soaring food prices, the Islamic holy month of Ramadan offers respite for some, with free meals offered to break the day of fasting. Analysts say inflation now poses the biggest threat to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's bid for re-election.
In Karaköy, a middle-class district in Istanbul, people patiently line up for an iftar to mark the end of the day of fasting. Many wait for more than an hour for a sandwich and soup. According to this man, who wanted to be identified only by his first name, Ahmed, it's a sign of the hard times facing Turkish people.
Why do you think all these people are waiting here just to receive a small food parcel? Unfortunately, everything is so expensive. The rents, the economy, the people are finished.
The opposition-controlled Istanbul municipality is providing the free food. Nationwide, major cities under opposition control are doing the same. With Turkey going to parliamentary and presidential elections in May, members of the opposition are calling attention to the country's high inflation rate, currently more than 55%. They are blaming President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for his unorthodox policy of cutting rather than raising interest rates to control inflation.
It's devastating. Poll after poll, we see up to 80% of participants complaining about economic conditions. 80% thinks things has gotten worse over the last 12 months. 60% on average thinks they will even get worse in the next 12 months.
In a city market, local farmers try to sell their produce. Many complain about the lack of customers and say they are struggling to survive.
Compared with last year, there is an increase of 100% in prices, even more, especially in the prices of animal feed. The feed prices doubled, and we have big hardships in producing and selling eggs. The same is true for our milk production. It is extremely expensive.
Gas prices soared 100%. We rented our field, and the rents went up immensely. The workers' rate was 150 Turkish lira. Now it has gone up to 400.
One of Erdogan's greatest achievements was years of unprecedented economic growth, and with it, the creation of a powerful religious middle class. Analysts say members of that class were always fearful their gains could be lost if Erdogan should lose power to pro-secular parties. But soaring inflation could be changing that political equation.
The economic crisis is cutting through all the segments, all the identities, and that's why it is just lessening the effect of the polarization, because both the conservatives and the secularists and all others are being affected by the inflation, by the economic crisis almost equally.
Erdogan is now trying to change the agenda. The commissioning of Turkey's first aircraft carrier on Monday, Erdogan said, underlined he's made the country into a regional power, a bid to reassure his nationalist religious voting base. Whether that base remains loyal to him will be known in election results next month.
Around 1.5 million people in Turkey were made homeless by the February 6 earthquake, with many still lacking permanent shelter. In the city of Iskenderun, badly hit by the quake, local authorities are using every available space.
The sleeping cars lined up at Iskenderun railway station allude to adventure. But this train is going nowhere. Hundreds of the city's residents, made homeless by February's earthquake, are now living in these cramped wagons. Among them is Sevil Uygur.
We have no houses. They're gone. They were leveled to the ground. So we took shelter here with the children, and we live here. They bring us food. The people here are not left hungry. But sleeping here is very problematic and difficult.
Uygur's granddaughter, Burin Uygur, is desperate to return to normality.
I want to go to the school, but at the moment the situation does not allow. Of course I want to go to school. If we could go to another place, she could go to school. But we could not, so we stayed here. Those who have money escaped and have gone to the other cities, and their children go to school. But we cannot do it, so we sit here on the train.
There are around 700 people living in the 27 wagons. 22 of them are sleeping cars with beds, which were quickly taken by the first arrivals. The remaining cars have no beds, and people sleep on upright chairs. Some people living here have homes that are still standing, but are too dangerous to live in.
Our house is a little damaged. If the authorities say that we can live in our house, we would go today, but we will stay here until they tell us it is safe to live there.
The rail cars are warmer and drier than a tent, but life here is cramped and crowded with little privacy. With hundreds of thousands of homes destroyed or damaged by the earthquake, it's not clear when the homeless survivors will be able to move on.
Diplomatic moves to end the conflict in Yemen are underway after Saudi Arabia and Iran, which supports opposite sides in the conflict, agreed to resume diplomatic relations. The 8-year war in the Arabian Peninsula country has caused hundreds of thousands of deaths, both directly and indirectly, and pushed the nation, already one of the world's poorest, to the brink of famine.
Sitting at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula is Yemen, home to several UNESCO World Heritage Sites and rich biodiversity, but also to the world's largest humanitarian crisis, plagued by almost a decade of war.
The humanitarian situation in Yemen is quite difficult. It is considered by the UN and humanitarian organization as one of the worst in the world currently. And this is due to soon to be 9 years of conflict. We're talking about 50% of the health facilities not operating. We're talking about water not reaching everyone.
The country has been in the grips of a civil war between a Saudi-led Arab coalition and the Iran-backed Houthi rebel group. Since the conflict escalated in 2015, the country's economy has been shattered. Homes, farms, and vital civilian infrastructure destroyed, with the continued fighting disrupting shipments of food and fuel from reaching the country's shores. More than 4 million people have been displaced by the fighting, with roughly 11 million on the brink of famine. The population also remains vulnerable to diseases due to inadequate health services. In 2017, the country suffered the largest ever outbreak of cholera in recent history, claiming the lives of thousands. Women and children have bared the brunt of the crisis, making up more than 3/4 of all displaced people in the country.
Yemen has roughly 30 million people. Out of the 30, 20 million, so 2/3, need some kind of humanitarian assistance. After 8 years of conflict, donors are not pledging funds as they once were.
The UN brokered a ceasefire between the warring parties, which took effect in April 2022, but ended after just 6 months with no substantial fruition. With the steep drop in humanitarian funding since the COVID pandemic, Yemen's humanitarian crisis has yet more dark days ahead.
Countries around the world generate 53.6 million metric tons of electronic waste. Discarded laptops are part of the problem, but engineers at Dell Technologies have come up with a new concept that could help keep them out of landfills.
Go through the security hole.
Trevor Morrison is taking apart this laptop to show how quickly and easily it can be done. What typically takes over an hour to disassemble now only takes a few minutes.
Now we can remove both speakers.
Morrison is an engineer at Dell Technologies headquarters in Round Rock, Texas, and the laptop is a prototype called Concept Luna. It's an attempt at addressing the global problem of e-waste. 53 million metric tons were generated in 2019 alone. A traditional laptop contains multiple screws, cables, and adhesives, making it a challenge to take apart.
If you have something of a display that's very difficult to detach, and it takes too long, you may not recycle it. It makes it difficult.
Concept Luna does away with all that. It has interlocking, interchangeable parts that make it easier to repair and recycle. Broken parts can be switched out without having to replace the entire laptop.
Maybe the keys are getting grimy or has dirt or something like that, or getting wear on them. But the electronics underneath are perfectly good and can be reused. So that's an example where we can make changes to the keyboard lattice on top, change that out, and have a longer life.
Company executives claim the design of Concept Luna could result in a 50% reduction of a laptop's carbon footprint. It's an idea that could have implications for the environment and consumers.
Instead of now, another $2,000 going to purchase a new piece of equipment, there's the capability to be able to repair it yourself, or take it literally down the street and someone else can repair it without cracking it.
It's one way that laptops can be more of a solution to e-waste.
Reach for the stars, it's now a reality with companies like Zafalto, which are planning to develop space tourism with balloons that will travel 25 kilometers into the stratosphere.
Careening towards space at a velocity of 4 meters per second, this balloon will travel to the edge of the atmosphere, to the border area between planet Earth and space. Aboard, no seasoned astronauts, but tourists. The journey is the brainchild of this team in Toulouse, France.
Le concept de Zefalto, c'est né un peu d'un rêve.
The concept of Zefalto stemmed from a dream.
The idea is to approach the stars as if you're on a sailboat. Concretely, the balloon will slowly rise 25 kilometers in an hour and a half, and then the passengers will see the curves of the planet plunge into the darkness of space. They'll be able to see the stars, the sunrise, from the stratosphere, with around 98% of the atmosphere below them.
This machine, provided by the French National Center for Space Studies, has allowed the company to recreate the extreme conditions the balloon will encounter at an altitude of 25 kilometers, a feat which has yet to be tested so far.
We've already trialled flights, but at low altitude. The next step will be flights at a higher altitude in the stratosphere, test flights. Then, we can obtain the certification that will allow us to run commercial flights towards the end of 2024.
Zefalto isn't the only company developing projects like this one. Whether or not it takes off, stakeholders say it could spur more research and development.
If the French National Center for Space Studies can contribute its knowledge and know-how and boost a sector of the economy, that's great. And if this knowledge is returned thanks to this company, and this contributes to the advance of technology and science, then why not?
The first flights, scheduled in 2025, are all already sold out. They came at a heavy price tag, around 120,000 euros per head.
28 minutes after 7. Sasifike emaphethelweni ngetindzaba tethu leqhamuka ngephandle kwalapha eveni. Sibahlola emakethe ngesimo selitulu. Masibuye, we sit down with Lizinkosi, who is the health minister. Kusipha nje sithombe sekwekuthi njengoba balitiko letempilo basalwa nawo ema-public health threats. So much has been done, so much progress has been made, but a lot is still yet to be done. A lot has to be done. Utasikhulumisa ke health minister Lizinkosi ngemisebenzi labayendile nalabahlele kuyenda. Kuchubeka kulwa nekugula lokukhona even.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
One minutes after 7. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Good morning once again. We highlighted we will have Health Minister Lizinkosi just to look at, the reality that Eswatini is burdened with a high prevalence of HIV infections and AIDS, tuberculosis, as well as other communicable diseases. But there are also, has been a rise in non-communicable diseases or conditions in Eswatini in recent years that compelled the Ministry of Health to conduct an intersectoral approach to ensure effective and sustainable prevention and control. While the burden of HIV and TB as well as other public health threats weighed heavy, significant progress has been made. Case in point is progress made in HIV responses indicated in the third population-based HIV impact assessment survey in Eswatini named SHIMS 3. leveta-ke ukuthi remarkable progress the country has made in addressing the HIV epidemic, demonstrating a major reduction in new HIV infections over the last decade. Health Minister Lizzie Nkosi joins me now to unpack some of, the programs that are in place to further respond to public health threats. A very good morning, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us once again. I think that's now a week ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah, awesome. Lovely. Minister, I've highlighted some of, the responses that you have to respond to public health threats. I think the biggest one, that has been the biggest one for over 30 years now, is the HIV epidemic. Shift 3 report, let's see, I believe it was in December, Mountain Inn.
That's right.
I was there, fortunately. Remarkable progress. The number 95 nastikulumisa, diba a bit too scientific for the general consumer of information.
That's right.
I'm happy that you're here.
Kusiphanjelest
form HIV epidemic.
Asbong, we are doing success. We are commemorating a World Health Organization 75th year. Big, but lelo kwenda senkhulume ngaloko ukuthi i-World Health Organization ibuka ku prevent tifo, ibuke i-health for all. Isinikete evidence-based guidance and lead in that. Ngibo labathi sibhekele i-evidence is lesikoleka langa kini evidence is ayikolekwa ngibi koleka ngithi.
Yeah.
HIV is one case in point. We, as a nation, have been independent for 55 years. For 40 years, we've been fighting this disease.
I've never looked at it like that, but yeah.
WHO has been around for 75 years. For 40 years, the world is fighting HIV. You can see how critical it was for us to stand up and be counted. Utsena sikhuluma ngalabo 95. Akuvakali kahle. But angibeke kanje. I-HIV lesikubona ukuthi size siphumelele simaswati ukuthi hulumende from the highest authority took up a stand. Phela ngwenyama yavele yamemetela yathi inzaba yethu sonke yayideclaration as an emergency. Kwangagcini lapho kwafuna ukuthi hulumende ende sure kwekuthi ema-ARVs uyatithengela. Le commitment hulumende uyenda before bo Global Fund, before bo PEPFAR. Hulumende makes that commitment. And Hulumende stuck with that commitment. Ngoba nabo betakithi nje ngoba kukhona lesikwendayo. Political will, critical. Kwesibili is rallying the nation. Kwekuthi sive. HIV we had no choice. I think good even in our history, anything that has killed a Maswati as much as HIV. We had no choice. So it meant the entire nation had to rally. But the critical role, the Ministry of Health, is that of a regulator, is that of a guider, is that of setting standards and monitoring them. But critically, sibuka kubo WHO ne guidance labasinikete yona. HIV isibone kakhulu ukuthi sibothatha nje data le reliable. Si analyze, sibiye sisebenzise ekutheni sende programs, sende policies, sende guidance lelandzelwa nguwo wonke umuntu. We have a lot of partners go HIV as Sive, but the biggest issue here ngokuthi Sive sonke seMaswati. And eMaswati trusting in leadership here ministry. And this is very important. Ngoba kufuna ukuthi kube khona a lead, and this is umsebenzi wethu as a custodian, but as a stewardship set. Kusho ukuthi kwelusa i-health yesive. And ku-HIV sikubonile lo ukuthi eMaswati ngalo ukuthi nje sibambisane kulalelwane kusetshenzwe kanye kusinalabedako basikhanze sigijima bagijime kanye nathi sibambisane akusho ukuthi kuniketa guidance akusavumeli innovation lebonakele kakhulu ka-HIV. So really kubonga kuma partners ethu sibonge the 70 Daga Health. I don't know, njengoba sisho nje 40 years, we're talking about soldiers on the ground. Some of them were taken by this disease, but they continued working. They continue working today. Lamuhla sisay infection rate say was 0.62. How amazing is that?
Amazing. That's very amazing.
Death rates ngalendlela lekehle ngawo. How incredible is that? Ukuthi nje nasibuka ke njengoba ukhuluma ngaShims 3 lokuvelako kona lokuthi nje bese kuba khona ema infections lamasha, even if we're at 0.62%, under 1%.
Yeah.
Still we're talking about 4,000 young people. We're talking about 3,200 of those being teenage girls and young women. And this is critical. Lekusho ukuthi nyalo taking that evidence forward. Sekufuna sibuke ukuthi how do we then continue preventing, and how do we come to the point where we can say goodbye to HIV?
And I
we think we can.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that one ngoba ngiyajabula ukuthi vele you are making those measures. In the last week simbonile Nature through their director Kanya Mabuza. Akhuluma ukuthi they have noticed ukuthi the transactional sex, let's say, exacerbate HIV, especially amongst teenage girls. Inzaba yema affluent men, sleeping with young girls, taking advantage of
that vulnerability, that poverty amongst that young group.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're already responding to that, Minister. But I think to further appreciate what you've highlighted, na isingwenyama indzaba yethu sonke, now ibeka now indzaba yokuthi live lathi ali wathenge ema-ARV, the procurement
to this day.
To this day. The cost of ARVs. Ngifunze a report where we see the United States government through PEPFAR, over 60 billion of United States US dollars, just to go kusita emavela se Africa. But to me, kunginiketela isithombe sokuthi kanze ama-ARV adule kangakanani, Minister.
Uyabona ukube kwendeka nje the slightest mistake kwathiwa abantu abadithengele ngabe sekude eMaswati.
Wow.
You can imagine with something you drink every day. Noma ngabe kusuwe 10 emalangeni. You're talking 10 times 365 and for the rest of your life. But we're not talking about 10 emalangeni here. We're talking about a lot of money. So, budget yaga health yema drugs, nearly over 35%, nearly 40% of it, yakma ARVs. And isithengela lalabana 15 and above. PEPFAR uthengela labanfana. Asite nakulokunye but basite ekutheni sisebenze njani. Global Fund uyasita la ekuthengeni lokho, but i-budget yaka health yemithi lenkulu ingena kuma-ARVs bese of course invent ekuvikela njengoba tekuvikela abantwana njengoba sitakhuluma nge-HPV later.
Yeah, we will talk about HPV later, but ngiyafuna nyalo singene ku-COVID-19. But before that, I want us to highlight Shims 3 achievement kahle. Highlightile 0.62% where ukuthi sekune viral load suppression. But nje asesihlathi it's a survey 93.7% of adults living with HIV are now aware of their status. Remarkable. Among adults living with HIV.
Remarkable, but however, sifuna leyo iye ku-99 because kusho ukuthi kufuneka sichubeke sipromote health, kufuna sichubeke sifundise sive ikakhulu the younger groups. Yabona sikhuluma nga 40 years, umntwana lotelwe nga 2005. Lamuhla lotaba sexually active akasati le story. So we need to make sure ukuthi bantu bayeva, particularly the youth, kunendlela kungenisa le message kubo so that istofika le ku-99. I mean, this achievement ya 94% is amazing. Live lingetela kwati loko nasika ku 2020 sasisi 95. But sesiyabona ukuthi an emergency like COVID can affect into lestendako lekusho ukuthi ngoba abantwana bebavalelekile abekho esikolweni youth asikhona lapho sithola khona, and we did this for 2 years. Kunengi lena kwendekile, but you are right. Bosathi 94% uya kulolo kunye.
Among adults living with HIV who are of their status, 97.3% were on ART, and among adults who were on ART, 96.2% had suppressed viral load. Loko ngijabulisa kakhulu ukuthi nangibuka le target, I believe it's a 2025 target.
It's actually kulama digits in 2030 target, but we are bringing 2025 closer because ikakhulu emavela afanana nathi nabo Botswana nabo Switzerland sekuyabonakala sesiyasonzela.
Ngiloko ke lokungijabulisa kakhulu mina bengifuna ukuhighlight ukuthi live la kangwane libe amongst the very first countries who meet the target. I wanted you to highlight that. I want us to move to COVID-19. And the reason why is because
ngicela siya ku-TB naku-malaria before COVID-19.
Before COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to TB. Inzabe TB response ingijabulisa kakhulu when I did my research, but you know, I'm happy that you're here to, you know, to tell us about this remarkable comeback. Le highlight ma statistics lesen wa collectile. It's saying over 11 years ago, a lot of cases were reported for a TB of over, in fact, from 11,000 new cases in 2011 to just over 2,000 cases. To me, that's remarkable.
It is.
11,000 minus 2,000, it's a lot of people. Yeah.
But nasibuka ku-TB basibeka amongst the top countries la achiever going towards the control. But you have to understand, TB is an old disease. It was here in Kusile. Kufike kwangena i-emergency ya HIV yatfola skala sekundlondlobala itishinje itinekete ine-challenge, something the world had not anticipated.
Yeah.
And difficulty ke ku-TB was this very stringent and very long regime treatment. Lebenda abantu bahambe bese ba default. Lokuhle lesekwendekile usilama treatments are easier now, sikhatsi sawo are shorter, and lele sikubonako nekwehlisa nje bantfu inombolo yebantu lababulawe yi-TB. Utawukhumbula ukuthi ngalesikhathi ibhedvuka kakhulu nayo le resistant to ama-drugs. I-ministry yasukuma into umsebenzi wawo yavula tindzawo nema-spaces okwenta sure ukuthi labane-TB batawutreateka kutonke tibhedlela. We've reduced that. Nyalo sinesibhedlela lesakhelwe nginaba Doctors Without Borders inhlangano lesekungisona referral hospital for TB. Uyabona kusuka kule nombolo letinkulu to where we are. But we still have quite a challenge with TB.
Yeah.
You know, I highlight ema achievements ethu, but ngifuna ukubona sine challenge with TB.
Yeah.
We still need to find more people. We still need to encourage bantfu ukuthi bachubeke ne-treatment. Ikakhulu ukuthi labo baba ne-TB basheshe basukume. Ngoba i-treatment say easier, really, seriously.
Yeah.
Yayithatha about 18 months and sometimes 24 months. It's changed.
I like the fact that, Minister, you approach yakho yegulwa naletifo. You do have, you know, the sense of appreciation, that glass half full perspective and mindset. Yeah. But you also do, I think it's very critical to look at it glass half empty as well, because the ever-growing need to fight public health threats doesn't stop. World Health Organization like articulate a logo every year. A mandate is solo imeganjalo ukuthi kufuna ukuthi wonke umuntu abe ne well-being lekahle, abe protected from kugula. Ngiyangijabulisa kakhulu lokho, ngicabanga ukuthi live kuyaliniketa ihope ukuthi sinemuntu lo wakhathalela kakhulu. Utsite ufuna sibuka esikhulumisa indaba ye-cancer after TB, right? Malaria. Let's talk about malaria. Indaba ye malaria is tricky ngoba singafiki nje nakumalaria sitabuka na i-cholera lebekhona lebhedvukile in recent months in mavela khona la Africa bekusithose kakhulu silivela kangwane, but ke bantu abakho bebedala nabo lokuthiwa but usinikete hope ukuthi you have control measures kungafiki la kangwane. Yeah. Talk to me about malaria. How bad is, you know, the situation ngenzabe malaria lapha even?
Well, the story is we're close to elimination. Besi amongst the top 8 nyalo semanenge mavela that was elimination of malaria. Sesi amongst the top 23 countries. La sibuka khona zero malaria. Zero malaria usho ukuthi nobody dies from malaria. We know what to do. We can intervene early. We have the right tools to intervene, and we are watching. We're keeping surveillance very close. Now about surveillance, history surveillance yethu malaria isuka le 1940s. And you would think segu, but we're very, very close.
Yeah.
But some of the things ngifuna ukuthi highlight again, ukuthi i-role yethu as individuals. If you are safe from HIV, somebody else is safe from HIV, and everybody is safe from HIV. If you're safe from TB, if I'm safe from TB, somebody else. We're not just doing it for live in Maswati kuphela. We're doing it for global health as well. Njengoba ukhuluma nge-cholera nje. Nabo malaria sinebo makhelwane nabanga control as much as we do. Siyathi kusi imbuzlana ayinama borders. But there are just a few things ngicabanga ukuthi maybe sive are not privy to the information noma sesiyikhohliwe. Indlela kangwane sibebecala kwenta i-malaria fund. and malaria fund. Yeah. And this comes at a time where Ingwenyama yeMaswati yayingu chairman wale African Leaders Malaria Alliance litanga ALMA. And because wabe so kanva COVID, the chairmanship yakhe yasiya extender for 3 years. But lekakwenda, which is part of his legacy in Africa, ngilokuthi asuse agenda ye-malaria yayikhulunywa ngaphandle kwe-AU nakutokhulunywa nge-AU wayisusa le ngaphandle eba yi-side event wayisusa le ngaphandle wayifaka ngekhathi ngoba out of the 400,000 people ababulawa malaria every year, over 90% of those are in Africa.
Wow.
Critical. So he did that critical step here ukuthi ande sure ukuthi kuyangena. Kwesibili promote regional coordination. Malaria sitokhulumisana asethe up lawo manangizane awa launch. Kwesithathu bakhulume nalo umholi ngenzaba ya zero malaria. As a responsibility yethu sonke individually. Lo zero malaria starts with me. These are part of his legacy as a leader lobeka concerned not just with health here but with global health. Ngoba by the time enda logo sine bese sivele siku elimination stage. So this is about us, it's about global health. So, you know, kubalekile lo ukuthi asinaka ku-launch nga 2019 of the malaria fund waphinze wasetha i-board to make sure ukuthi ayina launchwa imi leyo board isite kakhulu sibonile ku-COVID la sikhanza ukuthi sesiphelelwa imithi asikhona ukuyothenga. The board stepped in baphume bayothenga baphume bayodifunela because they are independent baphume bayofuna basilethele and it continues and they are very successful.
Yeah.
And this is very important. Seyakhona ke lamanye amavela silandzele kulogo but nje this country and through our leadership leads kuleyo conversation le.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I think, I'm not too sure, I think I was interning that year, nakulonjwa malaria fund. Was it Emanvul Hall?
Yes.
Yeah, no, so ngiyayikhumbula nakundiziswa le yambuzlwane lapha. It's interesting, 2019 to 2023, and the achievements that you've just articulated. Kufuna hulumende nelive langwane nenhlakanipho yemlisa kube tintfo lesitishayela tandla lapha even.
Kakhulu, you know, in some sakhuluma nge-cancer soon, but kukhona one man, he's late now, Simon Gunen, who, you know, we get ema health workers laba ngemahlanhladlela bese aba ngema candle bearers. Kuze kwabekwa i-award ngeligama lakhe because he was so passionate about malaria nekhulumisana nemave and playing a role in the global stage. So nje la even yabona kunengi lesikwendile kumalaria to contribute to global health safety.
Yeah. Interesting and it's remarkable indeed. Let's talk about cancer, Minister.
Yes.
And you know what, in as much as you may want ukuthi sikhulume nge-cancer njengesamlelo, I want us to focus on cervical cancer kancane. The reason why is because Eswatini has the highest cervical cancer incidence rate in Africa. But even so, we just had Dr. Delulego, Delulego Masego in the morning. We had Kusile last week, and we had another one the previous week. The preparation of the HPV vaccine rollout, I think it's a lifesaver, game changer. Very much important. Nabasipha let nombolo tebantu labashonako ngendzaba ye cervical cancer. Talk to me about this much needed intervention. Lesaniyendile. Utsiteke ungihlebele. In fact nje utshele sive sonke. Uthi his artistic sive sonke. No, besengiyamcela. Ufetile ukuthi in about a month. Stayibona le program iqale esikolweni. Talk to me about, you know, cervical cancer as a burden in Eswatini.
Okay. Uyati ukuthi ngitayikhulumisa indzaba cervical cancer ngoba nasikhuluma ngeburden ya HIV we still have 20 just a little over 24% yeMaswati laphila ne-HIV.
Yeah.
A lot of those are women. And sikhanze ukuthi i-HIV yenda ukuthi women babe susceptible kusho ukuthi lokwehla kwamasotsha abo bese baba se ingcopheleni lesetulo yekuthi babe nemdlavuza wesibeletho. So ngiko lokusithi khanze sesinaleyo cancer eyinengi kakhulu. But kunengi lokwendekile.
Yeah.
Nasibuka lemuva la kusebenza nabo PEPFAR nabo Global Fund kwenziwa nje surveillance lenkulu yafika on to about 103,000 women kubuka ukuthi yini lele bangela lo mdlavuza bekwathiwa ukuthi nge-HPV i-human papilloma virus but kuphinze kusihlatiele further ukuthi yini lama genotypes lesinawo la even ngiyiphi ke lele bese ibanga labo cancer ngoba kusemunye kuphela cancer lobangwa i-HPV kunalabanye bo cancer leyo nangizane leyo yasina into akwasecala ama programs treat neku prevent ukuthi abantu bagule bafe lawo ma programs include nayi i-program yokuthi nabafika bomake bahlolwe kucheckwe kubukwe ukuthi kukhona yini lokungemachubho ma lesions sokuthenga ma lesions kusina kukhona lokho kusetshenziswe a very simple tool electronic ukuthi isuse lawo ma lesions treatment icala lapho ku prevent it's part of prevention where somebody is really vulnerable so khombisa ukuthi kunema signs sile and that is part of the program ya go further lesiyende nabo PEPFAR but yendwa ngithi nema partners onke we have a lot of partners like kule nangizana but you know sikhuluma nge-cancer le-preventable and for me this is what really whatever litiko does it is something that is an absolute must the HPV vaccine. We've had a few false starts, but lonyaka, you know, my team is going to be talking about this. Let's have the clear messages ngoba funa si target batali, si target bomage, si target bobabe, si target bantwana, and si target bantwana labancane. So lauma messages funa be very very clear. So for now ndawashare aside lauma messages ngiletse la kusilala bas communicate la ba communicate. But give me this is so exciting. Lokuthi nje lonyaka sitaqala lo which means lamanye mave bomaka basafi from cervical cancer. Breast cancer yes. Cervical cancer no because it's preventable. There's a vaccine we can use lenga preventer lo cancer lo bulala bomake kangaka.
Yes.
And give me that one of the gurus ga health law lesayas khulumina amongst my directors which is front loading prevention. You're taking a 9-year-old long usune cervix. And we are putting lo mntwana lo so ucedzile le kulokugonywa up to age 5. Akasena relationship nega health ngaphandle ngaphethe lidinyo or something okunemkhuhlane uyabona and we're going to educate that child desire
it's a useful mechanism and it's it's a very proactive one at that.
It is proactive and it is preventive, it is necessary.
It is very necessary.
We want to take that child simboge apila without cervical cancer until ayofika kubo 90. We need to start that research. Luckily for me, litiko la health research kakhulu nje.
Again, just taking this one quick 10 seconds batali abawasayinela ama consent forms ekuvumela abantu ababo ukuthi especially the young girls under 15 ukuthi bayithole le vaccine ye HPV. Minister sochazile ukuthi itawusita kangakanani njengoba ke sibona incidence rate yayo cervical cancer. Minister sesikhathi sesincane kakhulu I wanted us ukuthi sikhulume kancane ngimangele ama average cost of treatment for cervical cancer imali lene kakhulu, so I think the intervention lena is very necessary. But I want us to talk about COVID-19 very briefly. The pandemic outbreak, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in particular, it spread like wildfire. Savuke kuseni sathola tindzaba ukuthi kwendeka le Wuhan. The next day it's in another country. The next day now kusekhona kangwane sekusitholile nathi. I think in as much as siwabone ematiko lamanye rightfully so ngoba it had a ripple effect on the economy.
HIV, you have to have everybody on board.
But I think the most formidable task be under my health ministries in all countries. And ngikongithi your term in usabuke the Ministry of Health, very formidable task, and yet the way let's connect responder ngakhona, the number of deaths compared to other countries. Talk to me about the experience of COVID-19.
This one, I think, shows what an outbreak would look like, what an emergency, a health emergency would look like. HIV kula slowly, and is still with us. This one we needed to manage quick and fast. Again, lokbaleka kakhulu ukuthi you rally the whole nation. You follow the science, critical. You follow the science and my partners again. The Ministry of Health is never able to work alone.
Yeah.
My partners kulena nje a partner le ikakhulu kuma NGOs lobeka ready kusicala nasi kwabanglu commission. But it meant because as we go along nalabanye bajoyina ko onke lama responses you will see ukuthi uhulumende usebenta nema NGOs such as the commission nalamanye ma NGOs usebenta ne private sector.
Of course.
We have not seen the private sector stand up as quickly and as much as they did go COVID-19. But my issues like again is the role of ministry. Ministry has to give the guidance. Ministry has to take the lead. A ministry has to monitor. A ministry brings the evidence. Inform EMA programs and lokubambisana